I still remember the first time the war hit me after I came home. It was a quiet afternoon, nothing out of the ordinary, until a sudden loud bang tore through the silence. A car backfired outside, but in my mind, it was the crack of gunfire. My heart slammed against my chest, adrenaline flooding my veins as if I was back in Fallujah. For a moment, I was there again, surrounded by dust, chaos, and the constant threat of death. During my tour, life was brutal and clear-cut. We lived by rules that left no room for second guesses. Survive at all costs. Every mission was a test of endurance, of willpower. Our squad moved as one. Brothers bonded by shared danger and sacrifice. We laughed, we fought, and sometimes we cried. The war demanded everything, yet it took even more. The battlefield was a place where emotions were buried deep beneath layers of focus and necessity. You learned to push pain aside, to numb your senses just enough to keep going. But those moments, those flashes of raw fear or sorrow, never truly disappeared. They lingered, hiding in the corners of your mind, waiting to surface when you least expected. Back home, the sounds of daily life sometimes felt overwhelming. The laughter of children, the hum of a lawnmower, even the creak of the floorboards, all were sharp reminders of the distance between where I was and where I used to be. It was a different kind of battle, one without clear enemies or defined victories. It was a fight for normalcy, for peace inside a mind that refused to be silent. The men I served with became family, their faces haunt my dreams, their absence a constant ache. I carry memories of firefights, of friends lost in the blink of an eye, of moments where I chose to live when others didn't. Those choices replay endlessly, a relentless echo of guilt and gratitude. I often wonder how many of us come home changed. Beyond recognition, the war doesn't just leave scars on the skin, it carves them into your soul. And sometimes, the loudest echoes are the ones inside your own head. Returning home didn't bring the relief I imagined. Instead, it opened a new front I wasn't prepared for. The battle within, the physical wounds I had could be seen and treated, but the invisible ones, the ones lodged deep in my mind and heart, were far harder to face. Some days, I felt numb, like a ghost wandering through my own life. I avoided mirrors because I didn't recognize the man staring back. The eyes were the same, but the soul behind them seemed distant, fractured. I tried to put on a brave face for Sarah and Lucas, but the truth was I was losing myself. Nightmares became my unwelcome companions. I'd wake gasping, drenched in sweat, reliving moments of terror that felt as real as the day they happened. I screamed silently, trapped inside memories that refused to fade. Sleep became both a refuge and a battleground. Sarah was my anchor, but even her love sometimes wasn't enough to pull me from the abyss. She watched helplessly as I drifted further away, unsure how to reach the man I once was. Our conversations grew strained, filled with misunderstandings and unspoken pain. I felt isolated, even in the presence of those who cared most. I didn't want to burden my family with the darkness that consumed me. Instead, I buried it deeper, pretending everything was fine while the weight of my silence crushed me. The laughter of Lucas was a reminder of what I stood to lose, yet I struggled to connect, feeling trapped behind a wall I couldn't tear down. The war had taught me to be strong, to hide my weakness. Asking for help felt like admitting defeat. But slowly, the cracks in my armor grew harder to ignore. Moments of anger, anxiety, and despair overwhelmed me. I realized that surviving the battlefield was, in the end, the real fight was learning to survive myself. I began to glimpse the necessity of confronting my demons. It was a terrifying prospect, but the alternative, losing everything I loved, was far worse. The journey to healing would be long and uncertain, but it was a path I had to take. For my family, and for the man I wanted to be again. The day I stepped off that plane, I thought the hardest part was over, but the shadows of war clung to me, like a second skin. Walking through the airport, I felt the eyes of strangers, some filled with gratitude, others with ignorance. No one could see the battles I was still fighting inside. Sarah was waiting, her smile bright but her eyes clouded with worry. Lucas ran into my arms, his small body full of energy and innocence. I wanted to be the father he deserved, but my hands trembled, and my heart felt heavy with a pain I couldn't explain. Every room in our house held memories that felt both comforting and alien. The creak of the stairs, the smell of Sarah's cooking, even the quiet hum of the refrigerator, all reminders of a life I was supposed to be part of, but felt disconnected from. Conversations became a challenge. Friends asked about the war, expecting stories of heroism and adventure. I gave them short answers, hiding the fear and guilt that gnawed at me. At night, Sarah would ask if I was okay, and I'd nod. Though, the truth was far from simple. Social gatherings were overwhelming. The noise, the laughter, the light, it all reminded me of the chaos from which I'd tried to escape. I preferred solitude, retreating into my own world where memories couldn't reach me, even if only for a little while. Work was no refuge either. The routines, the deadlines, they clashed with my restless mind. I found myself distracted, irritable, and exhausted. Colleagues noticed the change, but didn't understand. I didn't have the words to explain the invisible wounds I carried. The nights were the worst. Sleep offered no escape. Instead, it brought vivid nightmares and flashbacks. I'd wake choking, soaked in sweat, heart pounding as if I was back in the firefight. Sarah's gentle touch was the only thing grounding me to reality. One night, after a particularly bad dream, I sat on the porch, staring into the darkness. The stars felt distant, indifferent to my pain. I realized then that coming home didn't mean the war was over. The battle had just changed its shape. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. The shadows were growing, threatening to consume not just me but the family I loved. I had to find a way to fight back, to reclaim the life I'd left behind. I kept everything bottled up inside for so long that I forgot what it meant to share. The silence became my refuge and my prison. I convinced myself that I was protecting Sarah and Lucas by not burdening them with my pain. But in reality, I was isolating myself, drifting further from the people who mattered most. One day, after an argument sparked by my sudden anger over something trivial, Sarah looked me in the eyes and said, "You don't have to carry this alone anymore." Her words hit me harder than any grenade ever could. It was a breaking point I didn't know I needed. That night, I finally reached out for help. Making the call to schedule my first therapy session was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Doubts and fears flooded my mind. Would I be seen as weak? Would I be judged? But deep down, I knew that continuing to suffer in silence wasn't an option. Meeting Dr. Evans was a new beginning. She didn't rush me or push me. Instead, she listened with a patience that slowly chipped away at my defenses. In those sessions, I began to confront the memories I'd long buried: the firefight where my squad was ambushed, the friend who didn't make it out, the guilt that consumed me. Therapy forced me to face emotions I'd avoided for years. Pain, fear, shame, and anger all bubbled to the surface. It was exhausting and terrifying. But with each session, I felt a little lighter, as if I was learning to breathe again. Opening up wasn't easy at home either. I struggled to put into words what I was going through. But Sarah's unwavering support gave me strength. Our conversations became more honest, more real. Lucas began to see his father again, not the broken soldier, but the man who loved him fiercely. Slowly, the walls I'd built around myself started to crumble. I realized that healing wasn't about forgetting the past but learning to live with it. The scars remained, but they no longer defined me. I found new purpose in helping others. Volunteering with fellow veterans gave me a sense of connection and hope. Sharing my story reminded me that I wasn't alone, and that together, we could carry the weight of our experiences. Breaking the silence was the hardest battle I ever fought, but it was also the most important. It opened the door to a future where I could be present, where the echoes of war no longer controlled my life. A glimmer of hope. Healing is not a straight path. There are days when the past feels like a storm raging inside, threatening to pull me under. But there are also moments of light, small victories that remind me why I keep fighting. One afternoon, I sat with Lucas, helping him with his homework. His curious eyes looked up at me, and he said, "Dad, you're the bravest man I know." Those words hit me harder than any medal or commendation I ever received. In that moment, I realized that bravery isn't just about surviving war. It's about facing the scars it leaves behind. Sarah and I have learned to take it one day at a time. We celebrate the good days and support each other through the bad. Our love has been tested in ways I never imagined, but it has also grown stronger. We've rebuilt our family on a foundation of honesty and patience. Volunteering with other veterans has become a source of strength and purpose. Hearing their stories and sharing mine creates a bond that helps us heal together. We are a community forged by shared pain and resilience. The nightmares still come sometimes, but they don't control me anymore. I have tools and support to face them head on. Therapy taught me that vulnerability is not weak. It's a path to strength. Looking back, I see how far I've come. The echoes of the battlefield still linger, but they no longer define who I am. I am more than my trauma. I am a father, a husband, a friend, and a survivor. My story isn't unique, but it is mine. It's a testament to the power of courage, love, and hope. To anyone out there struggling with their own battles, know that you are not alone. Healing is possible, and there is always a glimmer of hope waiting to be found.